Last year I released 12 tracks, I just dropped another one, and I have a 10-track album coming up very soon as well. And I also have material for 2 or 3 more albums on my second project that I'm currently building as well. And so today I want to break down exactly how I structure my workflow to be able to have that constant flow of output, to be able to release track after track after track. For me, it's never about starting from zero, from scratch. It's to always have something to work on in the pipeline. So the core of my system is that I work on multiple tracks at the same time. All of these tracks are at different stages of production. In my workflow, there are 4 different stages. I'm going to go more into detail in each of these stages, but just to give you a quick overview, first there's the experimentation phase where I create the raw ideas. Then there's the arrangement phase where I'm building the full structure. And then I have the finalization phase where I'm tweaking the details, cleaning up the transitions, all that kind of stuff. And then at the last stage, there's the mixing and mastering phase, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's the final polish of everything to make it release ready. So when I open up my DAW, there's always something to work on, no matter what I'm feeling, no matter what mood I am today. The pipeline never stops moving. There's always this flow of output. Before any of this works, our setup needs to be ready, which means building up your own template first. So you're never going to start from zero. Let me give you a quick example of what my template looks like. I have my kick already loaded up. I have my bass line as well, with all the different types of basses that I usually use. The full thing is already organized into all the groups that I usually use. I also already have some plugins loaded. For example, in my glitch group, I have a effects chain that I usually use, so I don't have to load up the plugins over and over again. But you get the idea, just to have something to start working with that already looks engaging. The second thing that your setup needs is a sample library. What I mean with that is, if you're looking here at the left, this is my sample library here, the 2026 sample library. So whenever I need some inspiration, I can go look into these samples, and from there I can start working on a new project, because usually these sounds that I have in there are sounds that already give me some inspiration. Most importantly, you need to organize your files correctly, because after years and years and hundreds of projects, if you cannot find your stuff immediately, you will waste a lot of time. For example, here I have my main music folder in a online cloud, so I can access it on any kind of device that I want. So here I have my template, then I have my folder with all my projects. Here I have the Psynamik project. I go into the creative funnel, and this is where I find all the different stages of my tracks. So for example, if you go to the ideation and experimentation phase and into the February selection, I can see all of my ideas. And for example, I also recently finished my album, so if we go into finished projects, we can find my album here, boom, and everything is in here. Now let's go into each of these stages in more detail. So the first stage is creating the ideas. When I'm in creation mode, I don't try to be perfect. I try to play as much as I can. I try to follow my intuition as much as I can. I try to get something moving as quickly as possible. I try to find the main elements, the main ideas, the main vibe as soon as possible. What I want from this idea creation phase is to find that core vibe that already gives me a clear direction of where the track wants to go to, so that later when I want to arrange this track, it basically arranges itself, because the direction is already clear from the start. It's already very clear from the start how the track might sound like in the end when it's finished. Let me show you what this might look like. So this is, for example, an idea that I created in one session. I have all of my main elements, and you will hear that there is a very clear vibe going on. think you get the idea. This is what it sounds like when I mean a first idea where I clearly get a vibe, where I clearly can see the direction of where the track wants to go. You could also already hear that it's not just a loop, it's already a first little arrangement. This is also what I try to do right in the first session. Again, this helps you to get a clear direction how the track is going to evolve and how it could evolve over time. And so that way I'm never stuck in the loop ever again. Also, something that helps is after your first session, you might want to name your project appropriately to how this idea sounds like. For example, this idea right here, I've named it Darya's Pole. And this is already a very striking name. What we want is to find a name that could already sound like a released track. The reason why I'm doing that is because when I go into my folders and I see all the different projects, I want to have a striking name so that when I see that name, I can already hear the music in my head. And to help that even further, you can make a first export as soon as you're done with your session, so that you don't even have to jump into the session to hear what's going on. You can already open it up. And you can already hear it. Whenever I'm asking myself on which project I want to work on next, and I'm not really sure, I can just quickly jump into my projects and quickly have a listen to see if it inspires me to keep working on it. So now that I have this first idea, this first mini arrangement, it's time to go to the second phase, which is the arrangement phase. So in this case, for example, it would be time to develop this into a more complete structure. And this is more of a visual process. So I can, for example, just copy paste some parts. For example, this right here, I can just copy paste it in here, put these elements in there, and then, you know, remove some elements here, mute some elements there. And the goal here for me is to visually already see a first full structure. Over the years, I know what kind of structure I like to work with. For example, I like to have groovy parts, I like to have emotional parts, I like to have hypnotic parts, I like to have experimental parts. So whenever I finished with my idea, I can create a first little arrangement structure based on all these different parts that I like to work with. So now that I have the full structure of my arrangement, I can take my main element and play around with automations while the whole track is playing along. So then I record every automation, I record every audio, and then I can put it back into the arrangement and tweak further from there. Assuming I have a recording that I did for the full track, so usually 5 to 6 minutes, I can take that recording, put it into my track, and I can start arranging it, selecting the best parts, copy pasting, and then redo the same thing all over again. So automate, record, edit, arrange. And usually from all these recordings that I collect, it already gives me enough inspiration to find additional elements to complete the arrangement. And now the last stages, so stage 3 and 4 are for the finalization and for the mixing and the mastering. The finalization is purely edit mode. Now it's time to take those final decisions, remove some elements, add some last elements, tweak the transitions, make the transitions more smooth, add some ear candy, some effects, tweak the automations, all of that kind of stuff. And then in the mixing and mastering, it's pretty self-explanatory, but when you reach that point, the track should already be finished at 90 to 95%. Mixing and mastering is just about to polish everything and to get it ready to release. So with that workflow, I can always have a constant flow of output. I can always release track after track after track, finish track after track. So for example, if inspiration strikes, I can just start a new idea. And if I have, for example, the idea from before, if I feel especially connected to this idea in that moment, then great, I can go into that idea and create a first arrangement. Of course, on some days I feel completely uninspired, but that's fine too, because I can go into arrangements that are already finished and finalize that arrangement, because finalization is purely edit mode. I don't really have to be creative, and also you can just mix one of your finished arrangements. This is also something very simple to do if you don't feel very creative. And I also have to say that some tracks take days, some tracks take weeks, some take months, and some take even years. For example, for my album that is coming out very soon, I have tracks, for example, this one, I've made it in 2023. And I've only now been finalizing it for the album. So in a way, the tracks decide when they want to get finished, when they want to be released. Your job is to hear that calling, to feel whenever a track needs to be finished at the moment. Of course, there are things like external deadlines from labels, but if there are no deadlines, it's about you feeling when a track needs to be finished, feeling when a track needs to be released. Something that helps with that is to just write down some bigger goals. For example, last year I wrote down I want to finish an album before I turned 25, and I did finish my album before I turned 25, so it's very useful to write your goals down. That's all for today. Let me know in the comments if you want me to go into detail in some of these workflow stages. If you want help to build your own system that works specifically for you, I also offer one-on-one coaching sessions. You will find a link in the description below. Otherwise, if you like this video, then like the video, subscribe, and other than that, see you next time. Bye bye.